It's not the footwork. It's not the mechanics. It's not chemistry. It's the hair. It's gotta be the hair. And it goes like this. Put me in the game, I'm ready. I'll lead the team sure and steady. With the hair like Jordans. I've got the hair like Jordans. I've got the hair like Jordans. Skull cap so my sweat don't drip down. Hair flowing as I throw touchdowns. With the hair like Jordans. I've got the hair like Jordans. I've got the hair like Jordans.
Hello, Bulls fans. Welcome to Week 8, Kent State of Last Berlin. On this week's Last Berlin, we'll recap the UMass win. We're going to go around the MAC to see how it's shaping up. We're also going to have a guest from Kent State to do a Q&A with. We'll do a Bulls versus Kent matchup. We'll give you our Bruwpeg predictions. And then last but not least, we'll give you our shout-outs. Let's begin. The scoring summary for the Buffalo-UMass game. I'll start off with UMass with 7 seconds left to go in the second quarter. Lucas hit a 42-yard field goal. But UB in the first half had 13 points. They had two Clark field goals of 44 and 36. And also Khalil Mack, what can you say? Another great play. And even better, the after the catch, the run in to score a touchdown. UB with 5 points in the third quarter, a 27-yard Clark field goal, and then Houston with a great safety after a great Redden play. Finally, the offense gets on the board other than a field goal with Fred Lee, a nice stepping up, a nice 7-yard completion for a touchdown. And then Brandon Oliver with just a great day set the all-time rushing mark for UB. Also set the one-day attempts at rushing. And for him to score at the end, I think it was a very fitting tribute to a young man who's just done great things for UB. The team statistics for the game, UMass with 13 first downs, 6 rushing, 7 passing. UB with 25, 12 on the ground, 10 in the air, 3 by penalties. Net yards rushing, UB, Oliver at 215, UMass at 85. Passing, Licata with
167.
UMass had 5 less at 162. But again, a very efficient day by Joe. Impressively, no interceptions. Other thing, total offensive yards was 382 for UB versus 247. The one thing I want to talk about is I thought UB finally played a very smart, got out a lot of very undisciplined penalties, was only penalized 5 times for 40 yards versus UMass 7 for 72. The individual statistics with offense, you had Brandon Oliver who led the day with 43 rushes, net 216. His long was 21 and had a TD. Passing, you had Joe Licata, 18 of 27 for 167. Did have a TD. His long was 27. Sacked 0 times versus dual sack 3. No interceptions compared to duels 1. Receiving was actually sharp from UMass, 7 catches for 94 yards. But for UB, you had Fred Lee, 8 catches, 70 yards, and a great TD. Let's hope that Newts, and please, Howard Simon, learn how to say that when you do a television commentary. Let's hope that he's healthy and we see him at the camp.
Next on the defensive side of the ball, congratulations again to Adam Redden. This is the second time this year that Adam is receiving the MAC East Defensive Player of the Week. Redden with just a great game, 4 solo, 8 assisted tackles, 12 overall. It did have a half a sack, forced also a safety, had another pass breakup. Just a great game. The whole defense played well. Holding any team to 3 points at the Division I football level is incredible. And again, hats off to Khalil Mack. It has been so much fun watching him play football at UB. Everybody at Last Berlin would like to thank Jason Carlson for a great career at UB. He was a great athlete, great offensive lineman, looked like a wonderful character in the locker room, had a lot of fun. There's other pictures I could have put up that are a lot more funny, but maybe shouldn't have showed the light of day. Jason, dislocated ankle and broken fibula. Looks like his UB career was over. Jason, out of the Jamestown, New York area, was a great Bull. Thanks, Jason, for all that you did for UB.
We're going to circle back now. The one thing we're talking about is talk about the victory over UMass. So a 32-3 victory. When you watch this again tomorrow, which I know you all will, I'll have all the stats up, all the numbers, the running, the passing. So I'll give you all the core numbers. So let's stick right in. Let's circle back, talk about this game. Matt, I'm going to go to you first. Had some injuries. This is a game that maybe UB could have. Again, another tight first quarter. UB could have gone either way on this. So, Matt, tell me what's your thought and what's your takeaway of the game last week?
Yeah, my big takeaway, Dave, is the return of Next Bull In. It was Quinn's big flash in the pan, row the boat style thing at the beginning of his career. And I think we all had, when Carlson went down, flashbacks to Ostrowski's injury 2010 against Central Florida. And we've learned since then that this 2010 team was not very good. But at the time, when Ostrowski went down, it was 3-3. And the only reason that Central Florida was up 10-3 was because of a pick six in the last minute of the first half that game. And for me, the theme of the rest of that season was the juggling offensive linemen that happened for the rest of the year because we lost our rock in the middle of the line. So when Ostrowski went down, I think we all had flashbacks, or when Carlson went down, we all had flashbacks to Ostrowski's injury. Next play, Newts went down, and, we might as well make one of those Hitler parody videos out of, that 30 seconds of football. But after that, I was worried. That's definitely a chance where you could see emotionally the team cave in and give up. But the one credit I'll give the Time Warner team was the shots of all the guys. It's been mentioned on the boards. The shots of all the guys, linked arms, rocking back and forth on the bench. Even at that moment, Khalil Mack comes out on the next series and almost picks one off and then takes it to the house. We don't need to talk too much about that. And then, even through the rest of the game, muddy, sloppy, really rainy game, Ron Willoughby and Fred Lee really stepped up. Those two guys, Lee's been getting his numbers this year, but Willoughby, finally stepped up, got his snaps, made some good catches. I can't remember if any of them were for first downs or anything, but I noticed him. And I think that's really something to look for is the next bull in mentality. We really saw it in, Mac obviously is never the next bull, he's the first bull, but, he stepped up. And then Ron Willoughby came in off, his second string spot and got his snaps and did what he needed to do for the team.
Great. Yeah, I love Willoughby's one-handed catch. That was a great catch. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for talking about that. Hey, Conrad, you would like to kind of draw some comparisons between a couple teams. So, Conrad, take it away.
Well, yeah, I did it last week, and I think I'm gonna do it maybe more often to make sure. So I looked at the 2008 team last year. So I'm looking at him, or last week. So I'm looking at him again through 7 games. So that 2008 team was 3-4. They just came off that Army homecoming, come from behind victory. This team is 5-2. So they're definitely doing better. Competition, of course, was much different. That UB team took on some of the best teams in the West in that time, CMU and WMU. But in between those times, you see Willie versus Licata. That Willie was obviously a senior that year, so he put up much better numbers. Through this time, he had 1,735 yards passing, 14 TDs to 4 interceptions. But Licata's holding his own, 1,381 passing, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So, Willie obviously, as a senior quarterback, was better, but Licata is actually managing the game very well and handing the ball off, in last week's case, 43 times to a rock, Bo Oliver, who is out-rushing James Starks at the same time in 2008, 689 to 515 yards, so a full 170 yards more, and he has an additional touchdown, 5-4. Someone mentioned last week they want to talk about Thermalist and Henry, and 2008's Thermalist and Henry were much better, 109 attempts for 515 yards and 4 touchdowns through 7 games, where Taylor and Potts have only put in 100 attempts for 365 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then the other thing was he still has more touchdowns than Naaman, 6 touchdowns to 5, but Naaman had more receptions, 44, and more yards, 637. And he also got more support, 684 yards and 8 touchdowns from EJ, Hamlin, Rack, and Kizabeth, where this year they have stepped up every week. We have Lee Campbell, Weiser, and Schreck going for 55 receptions, 551 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And then the only other thing is the turnovers. Another interception, more fumble recoveries. UB this year is up to 19 turnovers forced versus 13 in the 2008 year. And the sacks are 24-6. It's ridiculous numbers. I think I called this earlier. Maybe the best defense we've ever had. And even despite that Baylor game where 70 points went up, we've only allowed 162 points through 7 games. In 2008, we allowed 199. And we scored more this year, 207 to 189. So things are looking good. Obviously, the teams we played, have contributed a lot to the numbers you're seeing, but the 2013 team is putting up numbers that are comparable, if not better, than the 2018.
Thank Conrad. 2008 was a special year for a lot of us, so it's interesting to draw parallels. Thank you very much. Hey Tim, Rosie, Rosie, Cheery, Cheery, the first two ones. I think we all have some concerns about the start of games for UB. So Tim, if you can kind of take that over and give us some more information on that.
Sure. Obviously, as our friend from Kent pointed out, we've played some really, really awful competition so far this year. I don't think that was quite the case in 2008. We had played some of the better teams in the MAC by this point in the season. And against those teams, we're winning big. We're winning big with defense, but we are starting so slow. And we haven't played someone with a dynamic, with like a really dynamic playmaker like a Dree Archer that we're going to see, or Blankenship from Ohio. We've played a lot of guys with a lot of vanilla players. And so I walked away from that first half before I had to leave. I didn't get to watch the rest of the game, but I walked away from that first half thinking, the score right now could be 3-0, or it could be 3-3, and this is UMass, and it's because our offense wasn't working. I liked some of the play calling. I really liked that first throw down the field. I liked the call. I just think, and this is going to sound weird coming from me, I think Licata needed to pull that ball down and run, because it was pretty obvious that there was nobody open, and the line just, there was 10 yards out in front of him where there was nobody there. So we need to get a little bit more creative with our play calling. Nothing crazy, but we can't keep, just letting our offense trip along against Kent or Ohio or Bowling Green, hoping that our defense is going to keep them off the board the entire first half, because we're coming up against some stronger teams right now. It was WMU all over again.
Great point. Let's before we leave this UMass game. I think that hit on Newts was definitely targeting. I thought it was a helmet to helmet. He went after him. I actually saw a video earlier about another hit, which I actually thought was a pretty good hit, where they're saying, well, he's done this before. Conrad, you and I are kind of on opposite sides of this issue here. So, Conrad, why don't you tell us what you thought about that hit, Conrad?
Well, I think I posted on UB Bull Run this afternoon, but I don't think he did not, in my opinion, pull the crown of his helmet down and hit him with the top of the head. I think it was kind of an incidental hit. It was a helmet-to-helmet hit, but I think it was incidental. I don't think the defensive back came in to deliver the kill shot. What he did do was hit a defensive receiver, which is still under that penalty. So I do agree it should have been 15 yards. It probably should have been an ejection. And that's the part of the game that hurts anyone who's on the defensive side, because if there was a good screen cap on that article on UB Bull Run where someone said he shouldn't have thrown that ball in the double coverage in the first place, and they screen capped and said this is where it was when the ball was thrown. The safety was beat by 7 yards. The ball hung up in the air. So that safety was sprinting for his life to catch up with Newts, and he got there right at the moment of impact. And it wasn't I'm going to kill him. I think it was just a very fast play. And he got there, he made his tackle. Newts happened to be down a little bit, and it happened. It wasn't even, the typical helmet-to-helmet hit you see where it was clean. That's why there's still so much controversy. It was so unclear what really happened. But I think that's where the game has to change. Is those safeties have to give the halo. They have to take a second before they run and make instant impact. They have to stop. Try to break up the ball with their hands. They can't go in there with a full body, because in the NFL we're seeing a good job. Anytime anyone goes down, the flag comes out, and we're seeing it a lot in college where they're overturning the targeting because it was just a good timed hit. But anytime you see those hits and you see the guys go down like that, the flag comes out. I'm very surprised the flag did not come out, and I tend to say we never get the flags. We're not Ohio, we're not Michigan, we don't get the calls, and I'm just happy that Newts is healthy and he looks like he's recovering, and because if one of our guys gets killed, we're not going to get the call apparently.
Conrad, for the sake of time, I'm saying that you're completely wrong, and I'll just leave it there. But for the sake of time, Tim.
I gotta kind of back Conrad here. I don't know whether or not he led with the crown. It's hard to tell on the quality of the video. But I do know that 10 years ago, no one makes that call. And that's one of the ways the game has changed with the concern about concussions. And you always have to walk that line between protecting the players and protecting the game, and the players got to come first. And I do feel bad for defensive backs because, they're taught, you want to go in there and you want to wreck that guy. That's, you don't want to hurt him, but you want to wreck him. And so should it have been a flag? Yes. Should it have been an ejection? Maybe. But in real time, it all happened. It all happened so fast that to say, he set out to knock Newt out, I don't know. I don't know if he did or not. I know he hit him with the helmet. I know he probably should not have hit Newts from where Newts was coming down, but it's a lot to think that this was not an assassination attempt.
Okay, another guy was wrong. I also thought that was a classless play where, he saw Newts down and doing the old fist pump when a guy's down. I don't mind if he made a play and knocked the ball out, but that fist pump was not he made a play. That fist pump was I knocked the guy out. Hey, Matt, are you on the right side of the tracks on this one, or are you with these other two fools? Where are you at on this, Matt?
Well, I have to apologize to Conrad because I was a little confused about what he was saying, I guess, all week, or all weekend, I should say. Where I stand is I have no doubt in my mind that helmet to helmet was the first contact from that number 2 guy. I do see, maybe it wasn't the crown of the head, and I can totally understand that maybe it wasn't intentional. At the end of the day, I think Tim's right in that it's a bang bang play. I think it was Tim who posted he's maybe it was Conrad, but Newt's knee is bent and he's coming down, and how quickly can you change your trajectory and stuff. I didn't even notice it as I was watching the replay until I watched the replay again. I was trying to ignore Howard Simon. Was the celebration, and it really looked to me like he looked down at Newts on the ground and then celebrated. And so at that point, I don't really care about the hit anymore. The shoulder could have been turned differently by number 4 instead of number 2, and it would have been a harmless, knock the wind out of him, good, hard football play. And instead, he got turned one way, and it was a helmet-to-helmet hit. Once I realized that the celebration was right after he looked down at the ground, that's where my gripe is with. And, we saw Khalil Mack get a touchdown taken back from him last year for holding the ball out or whatever, before he made it to the end zone, and that's not taunting. So I'm a little confused about that as well in the play.
I give him a pass on that too, but I think it was very scary from my perspective, from the helicopter view. You saw him go limp immediately, and once you see him go limp like that, you worry about the neck damage because they don't protect themselves in the fall. I don't know if I was, the guy on the field saw him go down the way he did. He just thought, if he hit him in the sternum, then you're allowed to do whatever you want. If he broke his ribs, you're allowed to celebrate on him. If he saw him down in pain and that's their best player on their team, I'm celebrating too. As long as I didn't see him go down like he was knocked out in a prize fight. So, they're all kids out there trying to do their best, and it's UMass. They're 2-20 in the last 2 years. He just made a big play for his team. I don't think he meant to kill Alex Newton. So I give it to him. I know he probably feels bad about what happened. So I'm not really going to vilify the kid who made the hit.
Okay, for the sake of
I'm the president of the Conrad fan. I'm the president of the Conrad fan club today. It seems. I didn't notice it at the time that the hit happened, but I noticed it on the replay. And what that tells me is, in real time, before I knew Newts was hurt, I didn't think there was anything wrong with him jumping around thinking he caused a fumble. Again, I think all the fault and all the anger here needs to be directed at the officials, and it needs to be directed at Howard Simon. Can we just put it where it belongs?
Absolutely.
Alex Nets?
I'm sorry, one more thing. I did tweet today that the coaches at UMass need to get a hold of that kid and teach him the rules and teach him how to hit in a way consistent with how college football is being played. Was it a defensive player or led with the head the week before? I'm not sure, but he was kicked out of the Miami game for a cheap hit. This was a very borderline cheap hit, if not an egregious cheap hit. He needs to be taught and mentored by the defensive backs coaches at UMass into how to deal with those situations, because right now he is an accident waiting to happen. He is reckless.
Okay, that's enough on that because you guys are wrong. So we'll move on. I don't want to bore our audience, so let's move on that. Talking about the East, if you look at the MAC East, UB's got a 5-game win streak. Nobody else in the East has got more than a 1-game win streak. You look at the West, and you've got Ball State, and Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois is on a 7-game win streak. Ball State's on a 5-game win streak. So what a difference dichotomy between the East and the West. But let's go around the MAC now. Matt, we're going to start with you. Let's take a look at some of UB's future opponents. Matt, you're going to take a look at the Ohio EMU game. So break that down for us.
Yeah, I was able to watch the Ohio EMU game until about the end of the third quarter when the UB game started. And obviously, I don't know. Interesting set of conclusions we can take here because EMU was, may have been playing with a lot of heart at the beginning. They returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. It was a great moment after I've forgotten his name, but after the tragic, thing that happened on their campus and with one of their players. I know that Alex Alvarado, who's kind of the hustle belt guy for EMU, was all over Twitter after that kickoff return. It was kind of good to see. And so, with EMU playing with heart, once, Ohio got some punches back, did EMU kind of fold? But, to start with just general impressions I got from that game, Ohio, looked a lot like we do offensively. The Kent State guy talked about, a simple offense running it well. And I think Tettleton and Blankenship look a lot like Licata and Oliver. I think Tettleton is a better passer and a, more seasoned passer. Obviously, he's beaten Penn State at Penn State. More seasoned passer than Licata. And Blankenship is a little bit more of a bruiser than Oliver, but he's an effective runner. And so those are just some general impressions I got. I do want to say, Bronson Hill had an easier day on Ohio than he did on us. That's something that I noticed right away, is that Bronson Hill was able to run on Ohio. And I think pretty much anybody would have said, we'll take Ohio over EMU. And Ohio now is, giving up 165 rush yards per game and 4.2 per carry. So people can run on them. And, we got Oliver. Hopefully, we don't have this rotating offensive line that I talked about that happened in 2010. I don't think we will. So if we can keep the rushing attack going, I see that from Ohio. On the other side, Ohio is pretty good against the pass. They've had 21 sacks this season, which UB's number is really good. I think, you said 24. I've forgotten already. 21 is not that far behind. Like, you take some of UB's opponents getting the ball out a little faster, and you're at 21 too. They're good against the pass, and I think that's what happened against EMU. I just want to run down these series in the third quarter from the Ohio EMU game. EMU forced a punt, and then they drove 99 yards or a touchdown to tie it up at 21. Then they forced another punt, and then they made it to the red zone against Ohio at 21-21. Throw an interception instead of going up 28-21, and then Ohio threw for 80 yards on the next play. Threw for 80 yards. They went up 28-21 themselves. They forced an EMU punt, returned it for 37 yards, and then took advantage of the short field. And once they made it 35-21, that's when the UB game started. But that was 2/3 of the way through the third quarter, so EMU was able to hang with them. And maybe they were playing on emotion, maybe they were playing on spirit, but they don't throw that interception in the end zone, and maybe the rest of the third quarter goes differently, and it's a close game into the last couple drives. And the other thing I want to say is just Ohio doesn't get off the field well. Their defense is right now 49% their opponents are converting on third downs. And if you take into account that opponents are also 4 for 7 on fourth downs, that becomes that 52% of third downs that Ohio's opponents have turn into first downs and keep the drive alive. So between being able to run on them and their defense not being able to get off on third down, those are kind of the big two things I noticed, both against EMU and from their larger season stats.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Hey, Tim, I'm going to go to you next. I am very concerned about this this Kent game. Let's look at it, like imagine if you had Bo and Mac out, and that's basically what's kind of happened to Kent. Now, Kent's given up the second most points in the MAC East. They're giving up 247 compared to Akron's given 252. UB's given up 162. So I can't imagine if we lost Bo and Mac how this team would go. So Tim, dig in more and tell us what do you think is going to happen this weekend, and tell me about their injuries and their players coming back.
Well, in some ways, when I heard Reardon was out last week and then questionable this week, I was thinking this is a really good thing for our team because one of the ways we've been able to beat opponents defensively is pressuring the quarterback and staying tight on the receivers, and we just haven't faced a quarterback good enough to make you pay for that yet. And Reardon was definitely a quarterback good enough to do that. But now we bring in the dimension of a mobile quarterback. Kent has, a dynamic playmaker. So what they don't have is a steady, consistent, disciplined style of play, and that's what's kind of burned them this season so far. They can score on you on any given play, and Dree Archer is if he's not 100%, he's 95%. He is once again Dree Archer, and he's kind of what I've been dreading all season, because we don't do well against guys that can break that long play. That's not the kind of defense we've been winning with this season against really bad teams. We've been letting them move a little bit, but just taking away the long plays, pressuring the quarterback, and waiting for the turnover to happen or waiting for the drive to stall. That's not going to work against Kent. So that's what we've seen all year. What we've done all year is opposite of what Kent is. So it's going to be how good do the safeties perform, because it's the big plays that will kill us, if anything does.
Yes.
Good. Well, the one thing I wanted to talk about real quick was there was plays to be made on that field, UMass, and thank God their quarterback is terrible. But there was times where they could have had some long drives. Conrad, you were able to kind of get some numbers and take a look at that Toledo-Navy game. What a heck of a shootout that game was. So, Conrad, give us what you saw in that game.
Yeah, so like I was saying a little bit before, but I'll say it again. I think Toledo looks to me like UB's 2008 UB offense, the 2013 UB defense, and your quarterback is 2012 Alex Zordich. They have two running back threats now. Dave Llewellyn went down, but he had a great game before he went down. He had 20 carries for 160 yards. And then they had Kareem Hunt, who was just a big play guy. He was going he had a couple huge touchdown runs to keep him in the game. I think his numbers ended up being 15 carries for 127 yards. So they had two backs over 100 yards on only 35 carries. And they have two really big, high-octane wide receivers in Bernard Reedy and Alonzo Russell. But then they have this quarterback who he's 11 for 20, 105 yards, a touchdown and interception. He was just sloppy. ESPN has their QBR rating. It was 35.3. He just barely edged out the Navy quarterback, which is bad because Navy never throws the ball. So he looks very vulnerable. It looks like the same guy we saw back in Buffalo last year, where he was very sloppy, but it was the weather, it was wet, it was windy. I think it's just him. So that's a vulnerability, but we have to stop the run, we have to stop Llewellyn, and we have to stop this new guy, Kareem Hunt, from breaking the big play. So I think this week we have the Trayon Durham and the Dree Archer combo. It'll be a big indicator of what we'll get in a couple of weeks against Toledo. The only other thing is they lost their all-pro linebacker, Dan Malls. He's out for the season. So that's a big blow for the Toledo defense, which obviously, after he left, the floodgates kind of opened up for Navy running the ball. And Dave Llewellyn got hurt. He hurt his back. I don't think it's going to be serious because they get Eastern Michigan, so I think he'll get some rest this week, and then I think he'll be okay to go against Buffalo. But it's something to look at. Toledo is Toledo and us are now hitting the injury bug at the same time, so it'll be interesting to see what happens when we meet in a couple weeks.
Good. Thank you, Conrad. Appreciate that. What an interesting score that game was. So that must have been probably that'd be a fun game to go watch and see. So not least, we'd like to introduce Sean. Sean is our guest blogger from Q&A. So we're going to start this series off. So Sean, why don't you say hello to everybody?
How you doing, everybody? Great to be here from Kent, Ohio.
All right. Well, we'll see about that after this. Let's see how these questions go. It's still great to be here. So we're going to start off right away. So Conrad, first question that you have for Sean.
Oh, okay. So the question I have is, Kent State is obviously 2-6, a disappointing season after last year's great season. Is it what kind of Kent team should we expect? Is it the schedule that has put them down, or is the team down this year?
Well, there's a lot of things you have to look at. First of all, an 11-win season is hard to duplicate for any MAC team. It's harder to duplicate when you lose 3 starting linemen, 2 of which are now in the NFL. So that whole offense is pretty much out the window, and they had to start fresh with a redshirt freshman quarterback. Yeah, they still had Dree Archer and Trayon Durham, But when they miss those 3 senior offensive linemen, and they can't run to that right side anymore, it causes a lot of problems for them. If you partner that with Dree Archer's injury in the first game, quarterback with a nagging knee injury, now we have Anthony Melchiori, who's out for the rest of the season. It's been a troubling season, but it's a lot of the schedule too. Anytime you see an experienced Bowling Green team week 2, and then you have to go right into Death Valley and Happy Valley, which is not a happy place. I was there and was not happy. And then you get a break against Western Michigan. It's very difficult to keep the confidence of this team up. I was at Monday's press conference, and they seemed very beaten, and they seemed very tired, but they seemed very hungry. The thing to look at, though, is they played a very good game of football against Northern Illinois, only losing by 14. They played a very good game of football against Ball State. They were, as Coach Haynes put it, in both games just 3 or 4 plays away from winning either one of those games. Then you look at South Alabama, and the wheels just fell off the wagon, and it just seems like they imploded. So what team you're going to see on Saturday, I don't know, because they have played such great football. But at South Alabama, I don't know if it's all the traveling or whatnot, but they just did not play good football by any means at South Alabama.
Yeah, Sean, I think 2 things. One, I think people were treading very lately on South Alabama. They're a good team. The travel doesn't help. Yeah, and the travel doesn't help. Didn't help when Buffalo's come back from Baylor. And no one in Buffalo is sleeping lightly on Kent. I'll give you that much. So, Matt, your question?
Yeah. Hey, Sean, I was going to ask about Roosevelt Nix first, but since you brought up Melchiori, I'll ask about him first. We all know that Melchiori is not out for the season, and one of the stats that really jumped out at me about Kent State is they are number 6 nationally in net punt yards, and Melchiori was a huge part of that. He had 14 fair catches, 14 punts inside the 20, and 11 50-yard punts on 35 punts total for the season. Can you say anything about the backup? I can't read my handwriting now, but I think his name is Horning. I looked up. He's got, of his 8 punts, 7 fair catches. So was some of that punt yardage, net yardage on the coverage team? Can we expect much of a drop-off in the punt game, or will it be a significant difference?
You know what? Melchiori was somebody who came in as a freshman and just started punting right away. His dad played here, and I saw during his first season, I said, this kid could possibly go to the NFL. Granted, I'm not a scout. I can't judge that kind of talent, but he was just so superior to any other punter I've really seen in a MAC school that I think if this kid takes the right steps, he could definitely go to the NFL at some point. So his injury is definitely troublesome for punting. Horning came in, and he had a few good games. If he continues to do well, that still remains to be seen. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but that's been kind of the bad area where his backup Miller, because Melchior was also the place kicker, their backup Miller has only made 1 for 4 field goals, so in as long as 21 yards. So when they get in the red zone, they better get a touchdown because it's not looking too good for place kicking. But punting, I think they're still pretty good, and Horning has done a pretty good job as a backup.
Good, thank you. And Buffalo's coming in with some injuries, and so this is a very interesting game for both teams. Tim, your question.
Well, since we're riding the MASH helicopter here, talking about Kent's injuries, what's the status on Colin Reardon? I saw him; he was listed, I think, as questionable Monday by most of the sites. But what's the word on him now?
Well, after Monday's press conference, he was still listed as questionable, as you said. We'll know more tomorrow when we go to their football practice. As of right now, I would still say he's probably questionable, and they still have David Fisher taking most of the first-team snaps. Again, we'll know more after tomorrow's practice, but especially because Haynes usually makes his decisions late in the week, Wednesdays and Thursdays usually. But usually after that Wednesday practice, if Fisher has taken more of the snaps with the first team and he looks like he's ready to go over Reardon, he will probably be your starter, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, he had 106 rushing yards plus 100 and I think it was 80 some passing yards, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you do want to see your starting quarterback back at the helm, but it might not be this week, and I don't think it will be, actually.
Conrad, next question.
I want to ask about the coach, Paul Haynes, who replacing a guy who came in and did so much so quickly, but a really good option. Haynes has a lot of good coaching experience with Ohio State, Michigan State, Arkansas, and he's a Kent State alum, so it's kind of a dream pick. But he's a defensive coach. Has his coaching style affected the offense? Because it's not the same explosive offense that we saw last year.
I don't really think it's affected the offense because we still have the same offensive coordinator, and our offense is still plenty explosive. It's just that, again, you don't have that offensive line to back it up. There was a reason Dre Archer came out of nowhere, because he was suspended this season because he didn't have enough credit hours, or major credited hours. So you saw him, and there was no video on him. There was just freshman year video where he looked nothing like he does now. And all offseason long, you heard people say, you know, this kid's going to come back and be a star, and he was. Now there's video on him. Now they know how to kind of guard him a little bit better. So you see that, but you still see him break out for 74-yard runs like he did at South Alabama, and have amazing catches like he did at South Alabama and Ball State. So there were a lot of reasons that team last year just surprised everybody. It was the right formula. It was the right mix. Hazel was one of them. I think Haynes is still a great coach. Just because he's a defensive coach, I don't think our offense has suffered at all. I just think because it's the same regime, essentially. It's just new players in there, and they're young, and they're banged up.
Right. So Trayon Durham has probably suffered the most. He's under 4 yards per carry, and he was looking to break out this season as the power to Dre Archer's speed. And is that the offensive line turnover that's just making it hard for him to find a hole?
Yeah, on top of that, we had Pat McShane, who was out for a while at the beginning of the season. He's a captain and a senior offensive lineman. I mean, him out, too, was a big deal. And when he was back in there at Western Michigan, I think that was his first game back, you could really tell what a difference he made. And Durham had a good game. But Durham rushing, he's not a speedy back. He's a very powerful back. He is anywhere between 630 pounds to 230 pounds to 260 pounds, and he's about my height, like 6'2". So, I mean, if you give him a few yards to get a full head of steam, I mean, he'll run over you, and he'll get the first down. But he's mainly a 3 yards in a cloud of dust running back. So when they don't give him that 3 yards to get a head of steam, it's just going to be that 3 yards in a cloud of dust, which is what, if you ask Haynes, that's what he likes to see. He just likes to move the ball so much slower than anybody else. He's a real methodical guy, but it's affected Durham, and it has affected his play. Just the whole new style, not even style of play, just because there's so many new linemen in there, and it's hard. It's really hard for a guy returning to carry a team and look for people, and people are looking for him to carry the team when he's not really getting much help from his offensive line.
Matt, next question?
Yeah, thanks. I'll come back to my Roosevelt Nix question. Nix, we're kind of spoiled at Buffalo with Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
Roosevelt Nix is the other, big-time front seven guy in the MAC. I looked at his stats, and I was kind of surprised when I was researching for this. 7 tackles for loss so far is, a great number, but he's only 1 sack. And one thing that we saw with Khalil this year is he has opened up space, chewed up blockers for the rest of the front seven. Is there anybody on Kent that we should look out for because Roosevelt Nix is drawing more attention? Or is there anybody that has been able to draw attention that, will open some space for Roosevelt Nix?
There's always Mark Fackler. He's always someone to look out for. He had a great game at Rutgers last year with that upset win. He had two picks, I believe. One of them or both of them were for pick sixes. I mean, it was incredible. So you always have to watch out for him, but people are starting to key on him on the right side as well. Roosevelt Nix on the left side, depending on how you're looking at it. But a lot of people are looking at him. You have to realize he has a back injury, too, that's been bothering him all season long. So that's been, hindering his ability to play, too. So you have 2 people ganging up on him, and he can't do anything about it because he has that troublesome herniated disc. But again, he is such a tough guy, and watching him practice, I mean, he just doesn't quit. He doesn't give up until, your quarterback is in the turf, since it's the MAC.
Hey, Tim, your last question, and Sean, this will be last question from the gang. I'm going to ask you a quick prediction after this, but Tim, your question, sir.
Last thing I have is if you do go with your backup quarterback, he's obviously more of a dual threat type of guy than Reardon, who's pretty good passer. How does that change the rest of your offense? I mean, does your offense have a second playbook for him, a second set of formations you like to see? Or is it, did you see a different offense at South Alabama structurally, or was it just a different quarterback trying to run the same offense?
It was just a different quarterback running the same offense because Haynes has stressed this for the past 2 weeks since Reardon went down. He said, we're not making any different playbook because Fisher knows this playbook and he knows it very well. He's just a different style quarterback. So when he sees that there's nobody open, he's not going to try and force it and force turnovers because he doesn't have as strong of an arm as Reardon does. But he will, take it and run and get the first down. And we saw that a lot of South Alabama with his, 100-plus rushing yards. So he's just a different style quarterback. He's dual threat. He can run. He has a little bit of speed, but it's the same exact offense. And Haynes and Brock don't have him learning any other playbook.
Thanks, Sean. Sean, just two last questions for you. So, one, how's the fan base? Well, obviously the record is not what I think the fan base predicted. And the last but not least, we can't let you leave until we get your prediction of how the game's going to end up this week.
The fan base is actually really, really good. Our first game, I was actually in the stands instead of on the field for once, and we had, I think it was 22 or 23,000. There were 7,000 students there, and it was really nice to see. They decorated the stadium. They now have our 3 bowl games in the end zone. They have new end zone art. It's really nice there, but they've done a lot of improvements to the stadium as well. Since Buffalo's last been back there, we now have end zone paint. It's awesome. But the fan base there for Bowling Green, which was our second home game, now we only get 5 home games. So Bowling Green had 22,000, and then you saw another 22,000 for Northern Illinois. A lot of those people I thought were going to show up in red, and I was mistaken. There were more Bowling Green fans at Dick's Stadium than there were Northern Illinois fans because Husky fans can travel. They can travel. But it was... We've averaged over 20,000 fans per game, which is good news for if you're a MAC school and you have to fight every year to make that 15,000 fans per game average in order to keep your FBS status and not go on probation, which Ken has been in trouble for a few times, and they've had to create campaigns. My freshman year a few years ago was called 90 KSU, where they needed 15,000 kids at every or 15,000 fans at every game in order to get 90,000 fans so they could stay in FBS school. Last year was 75 KSU because we only had 5 home games. This year they haven't even hinted at any of that because they've already almost hit their mark. So it's going to be cold. And it's Halloween. That, for those 2 reasons, I don't think you're going to see a lot of students. If you know anything about Kent State Halloween, people are going to get ready all day long. It's just what happens here. So you might see a lot of fans, you might see a lot of alumni, but students might be the one absent party because they are out partying. Besides that, it's been a really good fan base. Fans have come back, and fans have shown their support, and I believe Kent State is continuing to build a following. The question is, will they come back now that we're 2-6? It was one thing when we were 2-3, or 2-3, after 2 straight losses to Penn State and LSU. So 2-3, okay, they had 2 really tough games, but now that you're 2-6, do you come back? Now that there's such a slim chance of making a bowl game, do you come back? Now that Dree Archer is being keyed in on, do you come back? Now that you're not going to see him break out for those, huge plays, which you still might, do they come back? Those are the questions that need to be answered, and I couldn't answer them. You just have to wait till Saturday and find out. My prediction for the game, it's going to be a very hard-fought game. This is the type of team that Kent State likes to play, though. You look at Buffalo, and their offense isn't very flashy. There's no Jordan Lynch, there's no Matheny, there's no, they're not playing. If LSU was a MAC school, I guarantee Kent State probably could have won because they like to play that type of offense. It's a simple offense, but when run properly, it's run very well. Kent State and Buffalo, they run a very simple offense, but they can run well. So I think you're in for a very good game, actually. And no offense to Buffalo, you look at their record, you've beaten the worst of the worst in NCAA teams. You're all smiling because it's true. I mean, UConn couldn't beat a dirty rug. So you look at UMass and Eastern Michigan and UConn, and then Kent State coming off of Northern Illinois, Bowling Green, Ball State, South Alabama, LSU, Penn State. It's going to be a team that has faced so many really good football programs and hung in there with a few of them versus Buffalo, who's just been stomping on, ESPN's bottom 10. So it's going to be a very good game. I'm going to say the score will probably be somewhere between like 35-30 or 33-30. Who wins? I don't know. I'd like to say it's Kent State. That's just me, but it's 33-30. Pick a team. One of them will probably win by that score. It'll be somewhere in that neck of the woods.
Way to be decisive on your pick there, and way to pick your team.
I pick a team on Saturday. Here, if you want.
Great, that's great. Hey, way to be decisive there, Sean.
I'll say Kent State 35-32.
Okay, now I respect you. I respect that. That's good.
Go.
Hey, Sean, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. It's going to be an interesting game. This game will dictate, where these teams are at, and it's going to be a fun game. You're right. We have beaten some easier teams. This is our first real big test, and great article on UB Bull Run this week talking about that. But Sean, thanks. Have a good weekend. Unfortunately, you're going to get a trick this weekend, not a treat.
It's Ken Halloween. It's always a treat.
Good. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Guys.
Good. Let's go right now. We're going to start talking about the keys to victory. So we've talked about we've had our guest blogger in. We spent some time talking about the UMass game. Now it's kind of talking. Let's take a look forward at this Kent game. So Matt, I'm going to start with you, Matt. Let's talk about what your keys to the game are. So tell me, what do you think UB needs to do, and what is UB going to do to win this game?
Yeah. So Tim talked about the troubles of dealing with a mobile quarterbacking difference in styles between Kent and UB. And I think sometimes when it comes down to it, the key to winning is to find what you do well and to keep doing it well. And what UB's been doing well this year is winning in the trenches. Aside from having Brandon Oliver and having, against these crappy teams, but having the backups come in the fourth quarter and keep running the ball, the O-line is only allowing 1 sack per game, and that's tied for 15th nationally. And, of course, we know what our front seven brings. They're 5th nationally at over 3 sacks per game. And so I think the key is just to keep dominating the trenches. They might, Kent's going to be able to move the ball. They're too dynamic not to. Drew Archer's too dynamic. But if you control, the line of scrimmage, you control the time of possession, I think that's kind of the key. That's what we do well. Let's keep doing it well. The Jason Carlson injury could be really big. He was, not just another lineman, not just a captain. He's the most decorated lineman, I think UB's ever had. He was State Player of the Year in Class C for Southwestern his high school year. He was a 2-time All-State player. He won the Trench Trophy as the best lineman in Western New York, both his junior and senior years, when he played 2 ways, both defensive and offensive line. But Dylan Guy from Canada has starting experience, and John Kling came in last week, and played well. So I think hopefully we'll avoid that, line shuffle that we saw in 2010. And I just say, find what you do well and keep doing it well, and just play your game. So.
Great. Hey Tim, we're gonna go to you next. So Tim, tell me what's the key to victory for UB this week versus Kent?
Well, it's funny what our guest said, because what I had circled before we came in was we got to get more multidimensional on offense. It's great to have the running game anchor, to have Bo be kind of the anchor of what we have. But in the passing game, we need to spread it out a bit more. We need more from the tight end short. We need more from Fred Lee or Dunmore to stretch the field. If Alex Newts is back, if Newts isn't back, we need Willoughby to contribute. We have to threaten them with more than Oliver off tackle or Newts deep. We have to really give them a lot to think about defensively. We got to score early, and we got to keep them off the board in the fourth quarter.
Conrad, how does UB win this game? What do they have to do?
Well, I'm going to go the opposite of Tim. I don't think we need to score early. I think we're going to keep playing our way, and we're going to deflate Dick Stadium. Jeff Quinn wants us to rock Dick's. I want us to deflate Dick's. It depends on how many fans we have there. If we have more fans than them, then we can have it rocking. But I'd actually prefer for us to put to sleep. This is a 2-6 team. Their confidence level is low. We were there last year. this is the exact same setup as the Miami of Ohio game last year. They had just come off their big win over Ohio. They were trying to get to bowl eligibility. We were coming off these difficult losses, like NIU game, the Ohio game, and we were 1-17. I think we need to get there and suffocate them. I don't think we need to take too many chances on offense. I don't want to pick six, igniting the stadium. I don't want to fumble, igniting the stadium. I want us to go into that half the way we have, up 10-0, with them hanging their heads, thinking they can't beat us. We've shown that we can come out in the second half and finish it. So I think we just stay with that style. The only other thing I'm looking, I have the Adam the Hack Redden. I call him the Hack because he's the safety in that drop linebacker position. He's been able to shut down Branch Flower, last week before he punched someone. And I'm looking for him to do the same against Dree Archer. When Dree Archer goes up to the slot, we'll have Adam Redden out there watching him. And it's not going to be like a linebacker watching him. It's going to be like a safety. So he won't have that big matchup problem that he usually causes. So those are my two keys.
Thank you. So now this is interesting. This is a very interesting game. And I noticed that the Bruwpeg predictions have been coming in slowly. I think people are not quite sure what's going to happen in this game. So, Matt, because you're the newbie, we're going to go to you first. Let's give what is your breakdown. And I also want to know if you did pick Bo Oliver last week to break the record, yes or no. So I want all us to man up on that call. So prediction, and did you pick Bo to beat the record last week?
All right. Well, I'll start with I think our guest blogger is wildly underrating the defenses on both sides of the ball. I don't think either team gets to 30. I think that's crazy talk. I've got my Conrad style breakdown by quarter here this week. This UB team has not trailed since the third overtime of the game against Stony Brook. I think that streak ends this week. I have ultimately UB beating Kent State 27-20. UB will get their points. Kent State's going to get their points. I think Kent State's more boom or bust than UB. And I think UB has a little bit more of a consistent, grind it out. We've seen that. And I think ultimately UB will be able to capitalize more on that boom or bust style of Kent's offense than Kent will. I've got, first quarter, Kent up 7-3. Let's say a Dree Archer touchdown. Who cares? And then by halftime, we'll say 10-10 with a Bo TD. Third quarter, that's our bread and butter. That's where we've ground teams down all year. We'll score 10 points in the third. Licata passed to Fred Lee. Licata's gaining some more comfortability with Lee. You can tell in the last two games he's been thrown that way more often, let alone Lee's hands or anything like that. And then Kent's going to score 10 in the fourth, and Campbell's going to salt it away with a touchdown as well in the fourth. We'll give one touchdown to Archer and one to whatever quarterback they throw in there. They'll find a way. For UB, that's touchdown for Bo in the second, touchdown Licata to Lee in the third, touchdown for Campbell in the fourth, and 2 field goals for Clark. UB 27-20. Bonus Bruwpeg, Tedroy Lynch comes through with 1.5 sacks this week. It's my bonus Bruwpeg sleeper pick.
Wow, that's interesting. And you didn't answer my question. Did you pick Bo?
Oh, yeah, heaven forbid. I did not believe that Bo was going to.
Just wondering. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, Conrad, tell me, what do you got this game going? What's your call here?
It's a rough game. I have Buffalo at 27 points as well, so that's kind of scary. I'm going to bring in some stats here, and the stat I'm going to bring in is rushing touchdowns allowed. Kent State has allowed 17 rushing touchdowns in 8 games. So, I think we're going to bust out the Wildcat from the goal line, and we're going to see Campbell sneak in from 1. I think we're going to get Brandon Oliver 2 more, so that's 21 points. And then I think Patrick Clark, Mr. MVP, is going to put 2 more field goals up on the board, so that's going to be 27. Kent State. Now I say that. I do think our defense may score, because our defense has been scoring a lot. But not this week. So 27 points all through the running game on offense, 2 field goals. And then I think Kent State is going to get a field goal, a Dree Archer touchdown, and a missed 2-point conversion. So that's going to give Kent 9. 27-9 is going to be my prediction. I think this game is going to be a little bit close. That's why Kent's going to be going for 2. And then Buffalo's going to break it out in the fourth quarter, like they've done the last couple of weeks. The other big thing to look for, though, is Kent State's field goal kicker, 46.2% this year, 6 for 13. I said that last week because UMass kicker was awful, and he nailed his one opportunity. So hopefully I'm not reverse jinxing, but I'm looking for Kent State or for Buffalo to pretty much do what Kent did to us last year, which is kind of not really confidently, not really. I'm not really sure. I still think we beat Kent State if Alex Zordich makes 3 or 4 more passes in addition to that Hail Mary. It was just an all-time bad game for Buffalo. It wasn't as bad as it looked. People say we got blown out by Kent State last year. Go back and watch the film. This year, I think it's going to be the same way. We're going to look evenly matched, but somehow you're going to look at the scoreboard and we're going to be up by 20. So that's the game.
Conrad, I don't know if that UMass kicker nailed that kick. I call that thing a little bit of a squeaker. I think barely got over the goalpost. But, Conrad, I like that. 27-9. And you did pick Bo to break the record last week, didn't you?
I did. I said in the first half. And God, Jeff Quinn, he tried.
Again, too many carries. And Matt made a funny thing this week saying, hey, if you hit 45 attempts, you get the life up. So that's what they're trying to do with Bo. Hey, Tim. We know what your prediction is going to be, but tell us why you're going to predict that your 24-21 score.
Yeah, until it stops working, it's going to be 21-24, 24 in favor of UB. Oliver's going to run for 2. Licata's going to throw 1. And Clark's going to nail a 50-yarder to salt it away with less than 2 minutes left. I expect Tree Archer to score no less than 2 touchdowns. And given our history of return games, one of them will be a return. So that's my bonus for Peg. History Archer will prove once again we still can't cover the kick, and we still need to kick the ball out of bounds for any prayer. That's my prediction.
Hats off to DB Burns, who is on fire. Conrad was on fire, and then Conrad just DB Burns the last 3 weeks is a man on a mission. Close does not count in Bruwpeg. Well, actually, it does. You get a point versus 3, but. Okay, Connor, we'll go from there. So great. Interesting. So far, every pick, we've got 7 picks in already. Bruwpeg going slow. I think people want to see what's going to happen with Newts and a couple of the players. Everyone is jumping on the UB bandwagon, so the confidence in Amhersland, which is good. So that's our Bruwpeg. So let's end this. We're coming up on an hour here. Matt, we're going to start off with the newbie again. Matt, what are your shout-outs for this week?
All right, I once again have multiple shout-outs this week, and they're ordered from most offensive to least offensive. What do I hate the most, and what am I most excited about? First thing is Howard Simon. Just get him away from UB and never let him come back. I tried to sync up Paul Peck on the radio feed with ESPN3 feed, and my 7-year-old Dell laptop couldn't handle it, so I was stuck listening to Howard. It wasn't just Nuts. It wasn't just Alex Nuts and pronouncing that name wrong 15 times with the poor kid's lying on the ground. At one point, did you know we have a linebacker named Bactelli? Bo Bactelli, he's a linebacker. And then also another guy in the front 7, Christian Soloki. I remembered that 3 days after the fact, so I'm sure there were more. It's a joke. It was apparent that Howard Simon hadn't paid attention to UB football before this season. He was reading stats that you could tell he was reading stats that were coming through from his producer. I don't want to listen to him ever again. Slightly more exciting is this Kent trip. Students, I know we have such a large fan base for Last Berlin, but if you're watching this before Thursday at 5 p.m., email your name to whatever the email is. I made a post about it on UB Bull Run. Get your free ticket to Kent this Saturday. Nothing's more fun than traveling and being the forces of evil in an opponent's stadium. It's a lot of fun. Make a lot of noise. It's a good time. Topping that is I want to give a shout out to the Battle of the Bricks game, Ohio versus Miami this year. Ohio, released this week some pretty sharp-looking uniforms. It's not only the Battle of the Bricks, but it's also going to be Halloween weekend. Sorry, Tim. They're good uniforms. They're Halloween weekends. They're all white. They're calling it the Ghost Out. And for the Battle of the Bricks, they got the numbers are kind of in a brick font. I think it's tough to combine multiple features, but I like them a lot. And Tim is pulling his hair out at me, so I'm going to end there.
Hey Tim, I do have a shout out this week, but Tim, I'll let you. Now that yours has been stolen, why don't you think of something else?
No, he didn't steal, but I can't let this go.
Sure.
Ohio's uniforms look like they just acid washed their regular uniforms. They are terrible. It is like the worst of the '80s hit Ohio's uniforms. I like the idea Would have been a lot better if Boo Gates still played for the team. But it's like they're regular uniforms, but they use too much bleach. Like, oh, hell, what do we do now? Oh, we'll call them whiteout uniforms. It's
Generation gap, Tim. Generation gap.
No, no. I'm not. They could have done something with it, but it's just a regular uniform. White it out. It looks like the faded green on the sleeve. If you look really tight, they're.
So
I think
it looks
white's
like
a
the
better way
acid
to go
wash
than
that
black or
Conrad used to
silver.
wear to class.
Yeah. Maybe generation gaps because you don't remember the awful trend that was acid wash. I do, and I don't ever want to see that crap again.
Hey, Matt, make sure you send me a picture of that so I can put that. So when people are like, what are they talking about? I'll put that up on the video tomorrow morning.
Oh, it's in your
Yeah, there's-
inbox.
there-
Don't worry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there's
Thank
a
you.
YouTube video.
Okay.
All you need is some Pantera and to put some glam makeup on them, and it's 1984 all over again.
You're going to get some people. Like, you could have gone White Snake or you could have, enough's enough, but you went Pantera.
It doesn't matter. You could have picked anyone. You could pick any big hair 80s glam band or metal band or whatever. It was an awful period for almost everything. Can we just let it go?
We can let
All right.
it go.
My serious shout out is to Dave. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting up. Thank you for putting up with hurting us. But my other one, which is not so serious, goes to a high school coach in Texas, who is being investigated for bullying because his team beat his opponents 96-0, running his fourth stringers and third stringers for most of the second half. To whatever parent filed an official bullying complaint with the school district for that, give your kid a chance in life. Stop. Just let it go. That's the end of what I have to say.
That's a good thing. Hey, we'll honest. My shout out's going to go to the band and the cheerleaders and the parents and a lot of the fans. That was a nasty second quarter, and watching the band and the cheerleaders out there at the end of the game. Hats off to them. Did a great job. Well, that's it for right now.
Hey, I got mine.
Hey,
okay.
Conrad.
Oh my gosh, the most important one. I forgot that exactly. The frosting on top of the cake.
I have three. I took away your climatic ending, but you can edit that post production.
Yeah, I'll edit that out. Yeah, that will look really smooth when I edit that out.
My first one goes out to Grambling football for standing up for themselves. Buffalo, I don't know if we still do, but we used to do the bus trip to Bowling Green. It was 6 hours, so approximately 360 miles, 720 round trip. Their trip from New Orleans to Indianapolis on bus would be double that, and then they're expected to go back, do their homework, get back to class on Monday morning. It's kind of ridiculous. And the AD, he flew there on his own money, which is nice, but he should have got on the bus and experienced it so he could know that it was kind of ridiculous. So good for them, and they're going back to actually playing football, but I'm glad they stood up for themselves and they're our team. And I'm sure, me and Tim go different ways on amateurism, but, they're on their third coach in a season. They're the extreme case of being abused as student athletes and kind of locked into that contract that no one else is locked into. My second shout out is to UB Bull Run, to you writers, to everyone's posting. This came about because I was looking at something I wrote a year ago, November 2nd, 2012. We were 1-7, and I asked about what's the value of confidence. I went back to that in the post-game meal, which I posted this afternoon. But in the comments of that, maybe there's 3 comments. One of them was from Tim. He said, if basketball gets off to a rough start, this place is going to be a ghost town. And that's kind of the gloom and doom feeling we had, and it was just me and you writing to each other. And now to see what it is today, we have this podcast, we have new writers, BC Bull, putting things up all the time. Michael Brand, he is putting out professional level writing, which is awesome, and really good pieces. And, the site is just alive, the posting, the comments. It's great. And I thought it was going to happen. This is going to be the year where we could get it going as well as we can, and it's actually better than I thought. And I've done less than I thought I could because the things have changed, but everyone's picked up the slack, and it's been a lot of fun. And then my final shout-out goes to the nurses in our lives. Most of my time at Buffalo, I was a single guy who had to nurse my own injuries by myself. We got a nice twit pic of Alec Newt and his nurse taking care of him post-concussion and then taking him to a 3D movie, which hopefully worked out for him. Those things give me headaches without a concussion, so hopefully he's okay. And a special shout out to my own nurse who had a birthday this weekend on the 19th. She doesn't watch the show. She has enough of me in person. But if she ever clicked on it, happy birthday. That's it. You too, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Libra's all over the place.
Thank you. And sorry, Conrad, I forgot about you. Sorry about that. I forgot about the frosting on the cake. So in editing, it's going to look the smoothest you've ever seen it. But again, hey, last bowl-in, Kent State. This will be a very interesting last bowl-in. Depends what happens. This is a big weekend for UB football. They win this game, some great things coming in. So Conrad, say goodnight.
Bowl. It's all about the bowls.
Yeah.
See you guys next week.
Matt, say goodnight.
Have a good weekend,
Roll the
everybody. Get ready for the flashes.
All right.
Roll the boat.
Yeah. Tim.
Never forget what 2000 and blank felt like. So get amped up for this weekend.
Exactly. Thank you for not mentioning the year that doesn't get mentioned. Hey, for Tim, for Matt, for Conrad. Hey, thank you everybody who watched it tonight and enjoy the next day. A great game, a fun game this weekend with Kent. Let's go out there and win. Go Bulls. Good night, everybody. Thanks.